Brothers and sisters of the Warhammer universe, welcome back to Tortuga's Grim Rosaline. My name is Jeff, and today I'm going to show you how I paint a Grimdark Black Legion Warpsmith. We're halfway through September, crouching out to October, and coming up on my favorite holiday and my daughter's favorite holiday, Halloween. And to me, nothing in the Warhammer universe says Halloween like Grimdark and chaos. So without further ado, let's do this. So here's a list of all the paints that we'll be using on this build. We're going to start off with Citadel's Retributor armor and medium thinner. Everything on our model has already been based and primed in black, and we are starting right off with the fun times of, you guessed it, gold trim. Look, I know there are a few things in this hobby that cause more worry or dread than the dreaded chaos trim. But honestly, after you get through it a bunch of times, it starts becoming second nature, and honestly, I don't mind it at all. You just have to keep telling yourself that it's okay to accidentally paint over because we can retouch up with the black after. And don't worry if that first layer doesn't come out rich enough. We're going to do 2 layers of this coating on the gold that's going to really bring out that nice color. Up next is going to be Citadel's Leadbelcher with thinner medium. So we're going to use the Leadbelcher to paint all of the metallics on this miniature, and trust me, there are definitely a lot of metallics. Between all of the highlight metals on the body, the chainmail tabard, the mechanical arms, the warhammer, and everything on the backpack, you are going to be spending a pretty decent amount of time with this Leadbelcher. But don't think that it's going to be too overwhelming, because we're going to actually start making a lot of these metallics look different with our shading and highlighting. And just like with the Retributor armor, after doing 1 coat, if it doesn't look that great, don't worry about it. We're going to go back over with a second coat to make it look excellent. And while painting all the metallics, I couldn't help but think of the quote, "The power of the sun in the palm of my hand." Extra points of anybody that can tell me what movie that quote is from. Up next, we're using Vallejo's Model Color Red and Thinner Medium. We're going to be using the red to paint the handle of the Warhammer, as well as some of the cables off of the backpack. And again, like any other color, don't be worried if the first layer doesn't come out and pop enough. We're going to go over it with a second thin coating. And I know these cables on the backpack are pretty tight together, so while you're painting the reds, don't worry if we smudge over, because we're going to be able to touch those up with the next color. Next is going to be Citadel's Dark Reaper with thinner medium. So we are going to be using the Dark Reaper to do 2 thin coats of all the cabling on the body, as well as on the Warhammer and on the backpack, to make a little difference between the red and the metallic arms. We're also going to use the Dark Reaper to paint any of the joints in between all of the body armor plates. I really like using this color on all my Black Legion miniatures. I feel like it looks good and stands out enough against the black, the gold, the metallics, and the reds, but isn't too bright to take away of the theme of what a Black Legionary should be. Next, we're going to be using Citadel's Wraithbone with thinner medium. We're going to be using this to paint the skulls on the shoulders. And with Wraithbone, you always want to make this super thin. We're going to put on a coating, and it's probably going to look the greatest right off the bat. Let it dry and do a second coating, and if we need to, we'll do a third, but always let this dry. Next is going to be Vallejo's Model Air Mahogany. We're going to use this to paint 2 thin coats of the holster on his hip, as well as any belt that might be showing. Next, we're going to be using Vallejo's Model Color White, Model Color Ivory, and Thinner Medium. So we are going to use the ivory to base coat the plasma coils on the pistol. Then we're going to use the white over the ridges of the plasma coils, as well as two of the appendages on the mechanical arms and the eyes of the helmet. After we let that dry, we'll be using Citadel's Baal Red to go over any of those white areas that we painted. We're going to slightly paint over onto the metallics on the pistol, as well as on the appendages of the arms and around the eyes to give a nice glowing effect. And now that all the base paints are done, I have put the Warpsmith together and he is looking pretty nice so far. Next, we're going to start shading with Citadel's Nuln Oil, Argax Earthshade, and Druchii Violet. So we're going to start off with the Nuln Oil, and we're going to use this to shade all of the metallics on the body, the shoulder pads, the backpack, and the power hammer. However, we are not using it to shade any of the robotic arms. We're going to switch over to the Argax Earthshade, and we're going to use this to shade in all of the gold and black armor. And we're going to use this to shade the metallic arms. This is going to give a different color scheme and help these stand out against all the other metallics on the body. And finally, we're going to use the Druchii Violet, and we're going to use this on the handle of the power hammer as well as the cables on the backpack. Next, we're going to do highlighting with Vallejo's Model Air Chrome, Citadel's Retributor Armor, and Thinner Medium. We're going to start off with the Chrome, and we are going to use this to highlight all of the blades off of the back of the Warhammer, as well as the teeth on the front of the Warhammer, any of the blades off of the robotic arms, and then start to turn to highlighting. And with the highlighting, we're going to basically try to make it look like a light coming down, either directly down or a 45-degree angle, and start to touch any of the metallics with that chrome where the light would first hit. We are then going to do a mixture of chrome and Retributor armor 1-to-1 with model thinner, and we are going to start highlighting all of the gold on the pistol, any of the areas on the armor, backpack, as well as some of the appendages off the metallic arms. With all of our shading and highlighting done, our Warpsmith is really looking awesome, and it's time to bring it home with the Grimdark. We're going to use Villainy Inc.'s Sector Rust and Goon's Grime. We're going to start off with Goon's Grime on all of the cables off the backpack. These are being dragged through constant war, combat, and who knows what from planets, so we want this to look as dirty and grimy as possible. We're now going to use Sector Rust, and we're going to apply this to all of the armor plates on the corners moving into the centers, as well as all of the metallics like the tabard and the mechanical arms. I will usually do several coatings of Sector Rust in different areas on the miniature to really try to bring out that effect. Next is Citadel's Blood for the Blood God. You can't have Grimdark without a whole lot of blood, and Blood for the Blood God definitely delivers. So I will be applying this rather generously to all of the blade weapons on metallic arms, as well as the front of the Warhammer, the spike on the back, and then I will be pushing each of the generally applied areas down the arms, down the handle of the Warhammer, and getting it to a texture that I like. Like I always say, I like to have my chaos look like they literally just walked out of battle after battling hand-to-hand with at least 100 Space Marines. And to better enforce that, I always make sure that any of the skulls on the base of my models also are coated in Blood for the Blood God. I want this to look like an apocalyptic war zone. With the Villainy inks and Blood for the Blood God applied to our Warpsmith, he almost looks perfect, but I felt he was just missing something else. So I decided to add Villainy Inc.'s Coelia Green. I felt the exhaust off the backpack looked a bit too clean, so I wanted to test it out with this enamel and see if I could make it a bit dirtier, filthier, and corroded. And with a couple coats on it, I am really happy with how it turned out. And there you have it, my Grimdark Black Legion Warpsmith. I hope you enjoyed this, and I might have given you a couple ideas for some of your builds. And like I always say, Grim for the Grim Rosaline.